decided, I got me a little helper now, a little 16-year-old kid that I was kind of
Mentoring.
put upon me.
He's abusing.
Well,
He's abusing, did you say abusing?
It's a tough love
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, no, I got you, I got you.
Actually,
It's a learning opportunity, right?
It's a pretty
He
good.
cracks the window on his truck and tells him what to do next while everything's
No, that ain't quite like
Goes
that.
way up.
I literally, I was drenched. We got out there and cut some, I got a big red oak tree that was blown down during the winter time, so I got out there and cut it. It's, you know, that big around, we
Well,
just
we'll
split
build
it
another
by
house.
hand, you know, with a maul.
We're at, on Bypass Road between
I
Jackson
don't have
and
a lot of splitter.
Mr. Chairman. Yes. We went together.
You hurt my heart, Joel. I know our splitter, his name is Trent.
I do have a split ball.
So I was like higher over here when we saw us and
Deal with it, but I also make
One of our cases of particular interest, thank a little bit out
whole
for
time.
just everything we do.
Lots of I forgot what it was. I'll make those.
We haven't had an agenda this thick in a while. After it gets to you, I think. All for one thing, will eventually make it to your.
Stuff split, I mean, it's split all right, it wasn't great. Some of the stuff was,
Okay.
get after it.
So we really Christmas set up on the day when they.
Go home, get the popcorn out, and you can watch this from
Good
the.
cold. Throw that act and knock a chunk off there.
I guess I could stream it and give them my earphones.
That's what we, some of that stuff.
No, you might fall asleep on the lawnmower, we don't want to be responsible. You fall asleep on the lawnmower.
Gentlemen?
No,
How you doing?
he's saying y'all will put me to sleep if I listen to y'all.
I ain't gonna hurt. What's going on?
Tell me, what's up?
Yeah, it's not like we can fill the room with a rowdy crowd.
Are you gonna set the tax numbers tomorrow?
What's that?
Do we know if we're on yet?
Tentative? Tentative,
You probably.
rolling back.
We may be live.
Anything else?
It was supposed to be 25 after everything
I
was
don't
started.
see on the agenda.
Be nice if we had a little red light.
I'm going to DC.
So like real
I'll be at the
TV
White House on
studios.
Thursday.
Really? Yeah. What's the deal?
The man calls, you go. They're having a thing and, the ACCG called me. I'll get you some stuff on it. ACCG sent me put my name in the hat to go. There's like 10 of us going from Georgia. It's on,
Still make the
it's on,
president?
it's on Trump's,
Go ahead.
on deregulation.
No, yeah, I'm gonna call it off.
See y'all, thank y'all for what
Have
you
one,
do.
I just forgot.
Stay safe.
But I did check, and nobody emailed me to say they wanted to participate or not.
Nice, just, I'm waiting for me to turn some heat on so I don't go to sleep. It's nice just to sit down.
No, if you're cold, just go stand outside for a few
Oh, I
minutes.
am not cold. I keep my house at 68, but this ain't nothing.
Yeah.
EMC must love you.
Yeah, well, I spray foam the house and everything, so.
Yeah, you got an igloo cooler like I do. We spent lots of money turning the house into an igloo cooler. And let me tell you, it's the best money I ever spent. Absolutely.
My light bill's a third of what it was at the other house with the old fiberglass insulation. This one's foam. When I done the remodel, I foamed everything.
We got a big old house and several thousand square feet. When our house bill's never been over like $200, $220.
Mine was about $125 for it. And I keep it at 68 degrees.
Yeah.
I keep it so cold if I take a shower, if I want to, I turn the gas logs on in the bathroom to warm it up a little bit.
We're not quite that cold. Now Katie, she lives upstairs in the you know, the third attic space,
Yeah.
not far. I swear she's processing meat up there. I mean, it's like a deer cooler.
I like
And,
this.
you know, that's where all the heat rises too. It's probably costing us, we were able to shut that off, which we have a light bill like you. Are you on EMC or Georgia Power?
EMC.
Yeah, me
Oh, you feel better about that, right? You're a member? That's your EMC. You're a member.
$5.30 boss lady.
Huh? You're 529? Yeah, I got
I'm gonna
529.
buy that right there.
Oh, okay.
Need to add some more to it.
First red?
You're recording it.
Call to order the July 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Mr. Curry, will you do roll call?
Well, first
I'm sorry.
I'm going to introduce our intern here, and then we'll do the roll call.
Okay.
This is Meg Hicks. She is a native of Warm Springs, Georgia, so she's not from too far away. She is a recent graduate, like just a few months ago, from Mercer. She's a Fulbright scholar who we are lucky she's here because other things got canceled or put off temporarily. So we're able to have her here. She's with us until the end of August, and then she's on to her other adventures. And without stopping the meeting any longer, Meg Hicks.
Welcome.
Pitts Joel,
Yes.
Alicia McKinley,
Yes.
Jeffrey Hilton,
Here.
Samuel B,
Yes.
and then Johnny Dawson.
Here.
All right. Item number 2, the adoption of meeting minutes from our June 2020 meeting. Has everybody read these? Any changes, additions to this? Or do I have a motion to approve as is?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I was not here, so. I'm just saying.
Got it.
We surely missed you saying.
Uh-huh. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah. You bought that.
Item number 3, old business. The first item is amateur radio tower heights. I believe we've got some material here.
Yes, Madam Chair, I apologize for how late you got some of the material, but that was the last thing we worked on, and I got, of course, literally, you've got hours of research there. It takes a long time to find some of this material, to research ordinances. You've got the paper version of the spreadsheet. The critical piece of information you were interested in at your last meeting was what the maximum heights. Even that's a little complicated. It's not like they say, maximum height. Basically, most of them will say, this is the height at which we will not regulate you in any way. There's no special exception or conditional use required. And then above that, you're going to fall into generally what would be their typical telecommunications tower ordinance. In the ordinances that I looked at for the local counties, they don't really have any what I would call amateur radio specific regulations. They have these exemptions mentioned here and there. They're sort of scattered. So in your background information, your research, we did provide you with Claremont, California's ordinance, which thank you to Meg, she found. I'm going to give a lot of credit. A lot of this material was found by Meg. She did a lot of the research for me. And then you'll find another one here from Georgia, which was in some background material that I found. So you've got an ordinance that deals specifically with amateur radios. the towers and antennas here. So I guess the question is, how deep into this do you want to go? You've got the background material. I realize you did not have a lot of time to read it. So we can go wherever you'd like to. I certainly think that if we're going to stop off at this location, we might as well do it right. And as we have spent time on other ordinances, look at the background materials you've got. If in the future or tonight, it's like, well, how do we address this? And the answer most of the time is we don't. Again, we also don't have amateur radio specific information or policies in our ordinance. It's basically with an eye towards the big towers, and you've certainly dealt with those, You've had a couple of those come before you while you've been on this board. And the rest of the ordinance really doesn't deal with this small stuff. It's sort of like, let's kind of figure out how you fit in. In this particular case, I agree with the Mr. Pence, who spoke to you at your last meeting, that 35 feet is pretty much it for Upson County. And he was correct when you look at the research, sort of. 75 to 100 is the language. Again, sort of. It doesn't actually say that. It says that it is regulated above 75 or 100. Below that, we're not going to really look at you. So there would be more attention. It's not like it's a blanket, be as high as or tall as you want to. Or you're not capped necessarily at 75 or 100. Which leads me into some of the other background information. You've got that sheet from the FCC sub-department or department, which is very interesting. It basically tells us what we can't do and what the regulations that we sort of need to fashion ourselves in a certain way. So one of the things that I remember specifically was don't have a hard number, sort of like we see these other ordinances say, up to this number, yeah, you're good, and we don't need to even do anything except the building permit. Although I think that was a question at your last meeting, and I think we wanted, that language should specifically be in there. I think that we need building permits. If you want to waive building permits below a certain level, we can discuss that. I think you'll see in some of the materials, no, you get a building permit whether it's under that particular level or above. You just may not have to go through the conditional use or the special exception. Or, there's a long list of other conditions. You may not have to abide by all those other things those other towers have to because of the nature of your being an amateur tower. So Madam Chair, you've got a lot of background information, and we can go wherever you would like to go.
Any comments, conversation? Do you guys want to take time to review this information and come back next meeting with?
Yeah, I got a question or two. I don't know that I was here when this first came up. How'd this come up?
Last meeting.
Yeah, you weren't here.
Okay.
There's a gentleman that wants to
Build a tower or?
He wants to put in a
100 would be
I think it's
okay.
100, but he would be fine with 75. Right now, he's limited at 35.
I see.
The big deal was that he's manufacturing part of his tower himself, and it's not all,
So it's not factory made or?
it's not all, nothing is, architecturally spec'd on his. So
Right.
that's what he was looking for he wanted to stay legal, but he was looking around, to go around that part of it.
Okay.
And he also received, the same information you did. He was sent the agenda. I thought maybe I'd get an email from him, but obviously we don't have an ordinance yet, and there's no public hearing. But, certainly if Mr. Fences gets this material and has other input, or if he gets some other hands that are interested in contributing, we'll welcome those folks. But at least at this point, I didn't get any email from him about the material that you have received and he got a copy of. So
Where is he wanting to build it?
It was-
Willis Road.
Goes out on Willis Road.
Okay. Is there an FCC limit as far as height or?
no, you just start getting into light requirements and things like that if you get to.
Okay.
You go to a certain height, and you gotta have lights for planes and stuff like that.
But, our ham radios, radio operators rated by the FCC, oh yeah, they got manuals that they have to go by.
Well, they have to be licensed. So-
Exactly.
All right, I'd like to have an opportunity to read through the material provided and we can talk about it.
And certainly if you start going through the material and there's something you're missing, you want more ordinances, or you want some more information on some of the other things you've done, please contact me and I'll take that in and we'll get it out to you before your next meeting, so you have this information, and if you want more. I think from what I had researched, you got a pretty good feel for at least the hot buttons and the important things with amateur radio. But if there's some things that you run into that I didn't discover in my quick reading the material, please ask about it and we'll find what we can.
Okay, do we need to take a vote on that too?
No.
Okay.
This is just FYI discussion tonight.
So we will revisit this at the next August meeting.
So we'll table it to
Okay.
Is he looking for an answer, or Mr. Payne?
Eventually,
Eventually, he's just trying, not anything that's on a deadline.
Okay.
At least he didn't
he didn't indicate that he was in a
to us.
hurry.
Right.
Okay.
The second item is biennial planning commission rules of procedure amendments.
Yes, at the last meeting, according to the rules of procedure, we have to introduce any amendments at one meeting, and then you vote on them at the next, or no sooner than the next meeting anyway. There have been no changes to the recommendations that we had from staff, and these are those recommendations here, and the underlying material. We do this once every 2 years per the Planning Commission rules of procedure. We talk about roll call votes and how those will be done. And these are issues that I sort of observed over the last couple of years. I thought maybe it's a good idea to have a rule in here to discuss it. The grounds for decisions, this is something we discuss almost every meeting. We're not always real good about doing it, but let's make sure it's in the rules of procedure. And it comes from our ordinance. We didn't make that up. It's actually in our ordinances. And let's put it into our own rules of procedure. And then this public hearing thing where we have to have copies of our rules of procedure, or our public hearing process. This is actually state law. I try to have a copy in my binder. I'm not sure I always have one. But of course, with our current format, it sort of doesn't matter anyway. But hopefully in the future it will. This is actually state law, and those are the three things that have not changed from your last meeting. The staff certainly recommends those changes to your rules of procedure.
So those would be changes.
Yes, the underlined, tonight's your vote night, if you so choose, because we first discussed this at the last meeting.
So if you'll go back to that previous, does anybody have any questions on the roll call vote or the grounds for decision?
No.
Good.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Second? All in favor?
Very good, thank you very much. Madam Chair, you do have one you can sign tonight. There weren't any changes, so other than maybe taking the underlining out, that will be the official copy.
Okay. All right, item number 4, new business. We have an application for rezoning REZ 2020-04, John Housley, Trone Jefferson, 1200 US Highway 19. You guys have your packet here from Doug. We don't have anybody for the public hearing. We do have him on the
Yes.
phone? Okay. Do we?
You want-
Yeah.
Okay.
Open the public hearing. I wasn't sure if he was here for the city county.
City does it one way, the county does it
I didn't know
another.
if he was gonna be on the phone, that's what I was asking. This is Mr. Housley?
Yes, sir. Hello, this is Maggie from Elton County Building Design. Are you ready to have a public hearing? Okay, I'm gonna put you on speaker.
Thanks.
Hi, Mr. Housley, can you hear us okay?
Well, I can hear you just a little bit, yes. Can
Okay,
everyone hear me?
yes, we can. So we just opened the public hearing. Is there anything that you would like to say to the board? About,
Okay.
I'm sorry? I didn't hear what he said. Mr. Housley?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I said, is there anything that you would like to say to the board about your request for rezoning?
Yes, as the board probably already knows, the property already has the structure that I would utilize on the property. And there is one old, they called it an office building. Basically, it's a trailer that will be either demolished or removed. And the plan is to simply clean up the property, cut the grass and keep it cut, repair the fence that's already there, and to reestablish the property as a self-storage facility, which has been established as needed in the area and would be an improvement to the neighborhood down there on South 19th. I've actually talked with a neighbor, I know him pretty well now, and he seems pretty excited about it, just to get something active and going next door. The neighbor who is a body shop. And I guess I'm open for questions. I'm not exactly sure what else I should say.
Sure. Does anybody have any direct questions for Mr. Housley? Okay, Mr. Housley, if you don't have anything else, then we'll move to close the public hearing. Mr. Housley?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
I said if you don't have anything else, then we will close the public hearing.
Okay, if no one has any questions, I believe that's it.
Yeah, okay. Does anybody have any, I know three of us just sat in a joint meeting about this. Do you guys have any questions about this?
I'm gonna wait on the staff report. I know
Okay.
we had visited this one time before. And
Correct.
apparently,
Yeah, I've got.
it was denied by the county commission. I recall us approving it.
We
That's
did.
the only
With
question
some
I had.
conditions, with some conditions.
And I'm, I guess, curious as to why the county commission, what their reasoning was for not approving it.
That's my only question too, why it went through the process before and the
And
commissioners.
maybe, I would say this as well. Thomaston, as a city and Upson County as a county needs to, of course, in an effort to improve our business acumen, it would not be nice for property owners to clean up, especially on the main corridors coming into the city and the county. And this is on one of those corridors, and here we have a business owner who wants to improve the property, wants to clean up the property, wants to open a business there. So I'm very curious as to what the staff report is going to reveal.
Okay, if you'd like to get that, then we'll go from there.
So orally, I'm going to combine the rezoning special exception because they share almost all the same information. And so to start off, the property owner, which is Southeast Diversified LLC, Charlie Jefferson, is represented by John Housley, who we just talked to. And it is the application is to rezone it from R5, which is single family residential, which is what Lincoln Park is, which is to the southeast, I believe, of it to C2, which is general commercial, which would allow for the mini warehouses to exist as a special exception. The property is about a half an acre, it has 2 mini metal warehouses, and then the office building that, as mentioned earlier, he plans to tear down the office building. It was erected in 1990, there's no business occupation tax. We have no record of what that was used for beforehand. And it lies southwest corner of the intersection of US Highway 19, Bluegrass Street, and is located just east of Lincoln Park, and it's right next to the Thompson city limits. As I said, it's about 300 feet away from the city limits, so we had the Joint Planning Commission, and it was reviewed by them an hour ago. It's a surrounding area, it's mostly C2, so there's the commercial, the body shop which he mentioned, and then another area across the street, which is not currently in use, but it is C2, then R5 behind, which is Lincoln Park. Then R5 neighborhood, C2 is the commercial business. And it is important to notice that for C2, it does not meet some of the typical standard. It's only 1/2 acre, which C2 requires an acre. Front yard is a little shorter, side yard is shorter, and rear yard is shorter than the C2 development standards. And then the state of Georgia requires us to have standards of review. And so the standards of review for rezoning does it have an adverse effect on the insurance rating of this county, overtax of public utilities and streets presently existing to serve the site, has substantial adverse effect on the impact on the environment, including but not limited to drainage, soil erosion, sedimentation, flooding, air quality, and water quality, and climate, and have substantial adverse effect on the environment, including but not limited to drainage, soil erosion, sedimentation, flooding, air quality, and water quality, quantity. And the special exception ones are in the staff report. The staff analysis is that the property fronts US 19, which, as we mentioned, is one of the county's principal commercial corridors. And there's a repair garage to the south, a convenience store with 2 unoccupied commercial buildings on the same lot to the north. And there's a residential neighborhood to the west, which would serve as the primary market for this mini warehouses, and that this is an appropriate use for the area. And then the proposed zoning is C2, which is consistent with the other uses on this block, and the City of Thompson zoning. And C2 is an appropriate zoning along US Highway 19, as is Upson County's primary commercial corridor. And though commercial nodes should be planned, strict commercialization should not be permitted. And then finally, the Joint Planning Commission's recommendation was approval with the conditions that the office building that he mentioned is to be removed, and just that the grass is kept, because it's currently pretty high. And then, that's for y'all. Then here are the photos. So here is that is the office building that would be torn down, and those are the 2 storage facilities. There is again like the zonings that are next door. And then here's just the property. So the storage facility itself is actually pretty well maintained, but the office building is not so much. And then here are the surrounding areas. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, why was it disapproved by the county commission?
No one showed up to the meeting. That's it.
No one showed up to the meeting.
And so they didn't approve it.
Meaning no one from the applicant showed up for the meeting.
So they decided not to do it just because nobody showed up.
Exactly.
Was there any question about the property itself, as far as the size of the property? Was there any discussion in that meeting? I thought there was. Okay.
Who was the previous requester? It wasn't Mr. Housley.
It was
Horseman, John Horseman.
Dave, can I address that?
Yeah, and I think he was from out of town or something, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, yes, Mr. Housley, please address that.
I'm sorry, I've actually spoken with them. There was a gentleman who actually resided in Las Vegas who had a representative from Griffin who was attempting to have it rezoned she was effectively a real estate agent who was representing him, and he really didn't know what was going on. He was just funding her, and he had actually financed it with seller financing. And I spoke with him, and he really didn't know what happened. He just lost about $30,000 on the whole transaction because apparently she just didn't show up for the final hearing at all. And I spoke with her, and I don't know. She seemed kind of disoriented about the whole thing. But the difference is, I think here is that I'm a local person. I live over on North Bethel in Thomaston, and I'm buying this for the purpose of operating it myself here in Thomaston. They were effectively detached, and I'm not really sure what their purpose was, except it was the same as mine, to reopen it as a self-storage facility. But I don't know why she decided not to show up for the final hearing. And he really didn't seem to, he didn't seem to care, honestly, when I spoke with him. He had just kind of let it go.
Okay.
So this is me, I'm funding it, I'm the purchaser, and there's no one out of town who's involved with it at all. Except that I'm under contract to purchase it with a contingency that it receives rezoning, and as soon as I purchase it, we went over and cut the grass a little bit just to do an inspection because it was overgrown. But as soon as I purchase it, I can upgrade the property. I just can only do so much, not being the owner of the property.
Were there stipulations before?
He had to remove the sign that didn't meet the sign ordinance, and he had to tear down and fully remove that building,
The old office.
the old office.
Okay.
Now, the joint planning commission just met before this meeting, and we basically did the same requirements, tearing down the building, removing it, and maintaining the yard.
Okay. The sign.
The sign's gone.
Sign's gone.
Sign's
Sign's
gone.
gone.
Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions.
Anything else? Do I have a motion?
Yes, I'll make that motion to approve. I second it.
Okay. With the same conditions?
Yes.
Yes.
Same conditions based on what staff analysis.
Yeah, maintain the property, in terms of appearance, grass and whatnot, and, the removal of this
Yes.
defunct, office building.
Okay. Do you have that? Okay. Do we have a second? Jeff?
Second.
Everybody, all in favor?
For the record, let's show it's unanimous, 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Housley.
Well, that's only in the rezoning.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear anything that occurred there. So.
Just ignore it. It's an inspection.
Mr. Housley, you probably hear me. We have voted to approve or recommend approval of your rezoning.
Thank you.
Now, there's not going to be another staff presentation,
Yes.
but you now have the special exception consideration.
Did you hear that, Mr. Housley?
I believe so. You voted to approve it, but there's not going to be another hearing, but there will be I think the exception meeting was prior to this one.
No, we're gonna have that now.
So all we're about to do now, Mr. Housley, is vote on the special exception to allow the mini warehouse business.
Okay.
We just approved the C2, change to C2. Now we're voting on the special exception.
Okay.
With this one, any questions, comments,
Just,
motion?
I make a motion that we do the special exception with everything that's, the staff recommends.
And I second.
Yep, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Okay, Mr. Housley, I think we're officially done now. We just approved that, special exception.
Great, thank you.
So, when will that go to?
It should be in the staff report.
It will go to commission on August 11th.
So the next step will be, it will go in front of the county commissioners on August the 11th. So you would need to be present for that meeting.
Yes, I will be there.
Okay?
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, item C is the revised development plan for remnants of Hickory Ridge subdivision, lots 17 through 31, 33 through 40, Trent Jones Circle, Hickory Ridge Drive, Valley View Drive. Do we have
We have somebody that I'll
that's-
call.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing.
I'm going to call Mr. Steve Reeves, who is the surveyor. Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
This is Doug Courier. We have opened the public hearing. Now you have the next two agenda items, so we'll leave you on speaker for a while. We'll have to speak up. We've been told it's a little hard to hear us. But if you'd like to make any statements first, we're discussing the Hickory Ridge subdivision changes to the development plan. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, board members. My name's Steve Reeves. I'm the surveyor on this project at Hickory Ridge. And I assume most of you have some familiarity with Hickory Ridge and the process that has gone on out there through the years, beginning with the heading fields and building the Hickory Ridge and Hickory Ridge subdivision and golf course. I'm representing current owners and future owners of property here. Mr. Scott Lassiter originally purchased the whole remainder of Hickory Ridge property out there. He has since sold some to Rush Ministries Church, which would be to the east of the main drive there. What we're dealing with here is property that was in the Hickory Ridge subdivision that was platted and approved years ago with only partial road construction out there. And in doing this revised development plan, what we're trying to do is kind of combine the lots so we can leave lots that have frontage on the existing paved road and kind of do away with what would be future right-of-way or future roads that we're not going to be constructed. So when we finish here, basically we're going to have 7 buildable tracks there, which would be 3 lots that will remain as they were in the original plat. They have road frontage on the existing paved road. The other tracks we're combining in order to do away with some areas that don't have road frontage and combine some of them in some bigger tracks. And that's basically it. We got Mr. John McGuire, who's purchasing most of the property. He's also purchasing some property that is located in Pike County. As part of Pike County requirements, you have to have road frontage. So the property in Pike County would be combined with some of the property in Hudson County for road purpose. That to create a tract that would have existing road frontage on Hickory Ridge Drive or Trent Jones Circle. there will only be one building tract for the bigger parcel there, which we combined. But still, he purchased property in Pike County, so we have to combine them as one title on it in order to meet the Pike County requirements for road finance. So in the end there, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 additional building sites there. The lots on the corner there, Trent Jones Circle and Hickory Ridge Drive, those two lots will be combined. Mr. John McCarthy's brother owns those tracts there. And then up in the far northwest corner there, where we're combining 4 tracts and some right of way, that property is still owned by Mr. Lassiter. And I think as part of your ordinance requirements, when you change the development plan, it's just rezoned as a planned development. Anytime you change that, Mr. Curtis says that you have to have a development plan reapproved in order to do that. Even though we're not creating any more lots, we're creating less lots, but it's still a major change in the development plan. And that's pretty much it. We're just trying to clean up the property that's up there so that it will meet, the current Upson County ordinance for building tracts. And that's all I have for presentation, unless you have any questions. So.
Any questions? Sure.
No, I don't have any questions for me.
Okay. Mr. Reeves, if you don't have anything else, then we'll close the public hearing. Thank you for joining us. Doug, if you want to, do you have a?
Yep, I will go over you've got about a very short 2-page staff report.
Public hearing's closed. Yes.
But Mr. Reeves will stay with us because he may have additional questions, and he's dealing with the next issue too, so he'll stay with us. The issue here centers around the fact that the zoning on this property is PM. That's a planned multi-use, which means there's not a lot of guidelines. Basically, on a case-by-case basis, you design these guidelines. So if we were just to say, okay, you're combining these lots, go forward, when they came in for 1 building or 5 buildings, we don't have any standards. So you see some recommended conditions further in the staff report. And as Mr. Reeves alluded to, and this is in the staff report, if this was a traditional subdivision in AR or R2 or something, the fact that you are making or creating fewer lots, that's not reviewable. That basically says that's not a subdivision, just go do it. But the fact that this is PM zoning and we don't have any guidelines, and as part of the process, a development plan is required to tell us what those guidelines are going to be. When you make any changes, whether it's increasing or decreasing, in this case, it's my interpretation, this is a significant change to the remainder of what's left of Hickory Ridge, so we need to have guidelines. You have some very large parcels here, which if somebody, say, proposed 5 homes, okay, I guess you get 5 homes because we don't have any guidelines to tell you you don't. What are the setbacks? Well, those, I believe, are in the old regulations. Mr. Reeves was very good enough to put that on the revised development plan. So we have some of those, but we don't have a lot. As a matter of fact, they could say we want to put 5 commercial buildings up there. We don't have any guidelines to tell them not to. So because this is not a traditional zoning district, this is a zoning district that allows multi-use. So a lot of this, it seems like a waste. It's just combining everything, it should be simpler. Well, not really, because of the zoning at hand, and that's the PM zoning. A lot of the subdivision was dissolved with earlier rezoning back in, let's see, there in August of 2014 through Ordinance 233. So this was a much larger development, and this is basically what was left behind. Part of it had been sold as individual lots. And that's why some of it is being combined now, because it was still in the individual lots, but it was not purchased by Rush Ministries or the church. Rush Ministries being the larger property owner in all of that. There is not really anything that we are able to find, Mr. Rees or myself, that says development plan. So we just have to go by what we do have, and that's the plat. And that's got a few guidelines, a few setbacks that are actually recorded on the plat itself. This is the description the text description of the lots that are being combined. You have a copy of the plan, which is the better thing to look at. But these are the combinations resulting in basically 7 lots, one not more than 2 acres, and the other one up to, where's the big one, 20.18 acres. So we've got some variety in the land that is going to be left over with this change. So we have a couple of recommendations here for conditions. This is something also that will be going to the Board of Commissioners. They had to approve the rezoning. They would have approved the development plan. Therefore, they're going to approve any revisions. But of course, you review it first and make your recommendations. So staff has no objection to this. However, we do think that just for the protection of the county and guidance for staff, we need some conditions. So the first one is that we have a written binding summary of intent, and this zoning district talks about a summary of intent, describing what the future development is going to be like, so that even if we don't have full guidance, we at least have an understanding. Now, how detailed that summary of intent is something that you can decide, and we can, whether it's offered tonight or at some time in the future, how detailed do you want that to be? We have entire zoning districts, and that's where condition number 2 comes in, is short of any new guidelines for what's going to be developed on these lots. Okay, well, let's have AR as the fallback, because that's what's around it, that's what it used to be zoned. We haven't been told there's going to be commercial development. We haven't been told they want to put apartments up there. We haven't been told they want to put 20 homes up there. We don't know, actually, what they want to put up there. And again, because they're not in the traditional zoning district, they can do whatever they want to if we don't have some sort of guidelines and rules. So basically, the first one gives them the opportunity to tell us, what are you going to do, and what rules are you willing to set? And that has to be reviewed by y'all and approved with a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. Now, I give them a default, and I give you a default. Okay, if you don't want to come up with specific guidelines, whatever's not already on the plan, we'll look to AR. So we have a set of rules. Okay, we know what AR requires and what the requirements are. We have no idea what the zoning in this property requires, except for the very few items that are on the plat itself. And, again, this is a great, a picture's worth 1,000 words. The existing setbacks we've got are front yard 20 from the right of way, rear yard 20, side yard 20, minimum lot 1 acre, so it could be subdivided again. Minimum lot width 100 feet, and if they decide to do streets again, 30 feet wide. That's all that we know about. We don't know commercial, we don't know apartments, we don't know mix. We don't have any of that, so we just need guidance, and that's what we're asking for in the statement of intent. Short of the summary of intent, let's go with AR rules, and if everybody's happy with that, okay, we can do that. Even though it's a different zoning district, we just follow the AR rules plus what I just read off, and we go. Obviously these setbacks dominating or being in place of whatever's in the AR. So that's it from staff, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, so with that recommendation to basically put AR zoning restrictions on this property, that would preclude them from putting any commercial business up there?
It would,
Okay.
unless it's a home occupation.
Okay, so either they have to farm or build a house. pretty much the limit.
Unless they come up with a summary of intent that says something different, and that's accepted by the Board of Commissioners.
I see, okay.
But that would be our final decision. Once they presented something, it would come back to us.
Well, you would see the draft if they decide what we've required them to come up with a summary of intent. Now, that's going to be as vague or as specific as they choose. All right, this is their proposal, whatever they want to put in the summary of intent. I've just given everybody sort of a fallback. If you don't know what you want, or you know you don't want really much intents-wise, okay, then AR is the fallback. We all know what those rules are, and we'll go from there. So that's sort of the easy way out if we don't want to work too hard and all we want to do is residential. Or maybe at this point they have no idea what they want to do, or they want to build one house. We don't know. That's not committed anywhere. It's not stated anywhere. There's nothing in law written, an adopted ordinance. So, like I said, it's sort of wide open between the summary of intent. I mean, we could eliminate number 2. If we have a detailed summary of intent, and that lays out everything, and we're all comfortable with that, we don't need number 2, because it's different enough from AR that, okay, well, it doesn't fit in AR, or they absolutely want to do something different, so we are going to set our own rules. You're just going to have to decide, and the Board of Commissioners will have to decide, if you go with a summary of intent, is it descriptive enough, does it give you enough detail that, okay, we know what your intention is on these parcels that range from 2 acres to 20 acres?
Yeah.
Okay, because right now, you can do almost anything you want to do.
Have you had any discussions with the owners in regard to this proposal? And, you know, I guess I'm trying to see if there's any feedback from the owners, any indication.
I have not, all of my communication has been pretty much with Mr. Reeves. I've had a few emails back and forth with Mr. Lassiter, but they were not, he basically asked me what summary of intent might look like, and I gave him an example that wasn't that close, but it's the only thing we have. Mr. Reeves, do you have any indication if they told you what development they are expecting to see on these lots?
Just from my conversation, I've heard nothing that would deal with any commercial or any type of development like that. They want it put together like this so they can each build a house up there. I mean, Mr. John McGuire, and Mr. David McGuire, I believe intend to build a house there. Mr. Lassiter, I assume he probably would just would keep the tract up in the northwest corner or sell it to someone else who would build a house there.
No, Mr. David McGuire, is that the same one that's associated with Rush Ministries?
Associate Pastor at Rush Ministries
Okay.
and his brother John.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was that a question to me or?
Just discussion.
Just discussion, yeah.
So the 20-acre lot, would, one of them is planning to build a house on the 20-acre lot?
I didn't get that. One on the almost 5-acre lot and one on the 2-acre lot.
Okay.
I don't know who owns the 20-acre lot? Who will end up with that?
Mr. John McGuire.
Okay.
And will that have a home on it, or is that just going to remain one
It
tract?
will have a home on it. Also, lot 31, lot 30, lot 29, and lot 34 will probably have a home on it. Just as the requirements for Hickory Ridge, the rest of the homes they already have.
Okay.
And then the combined lot 27 and 26 will have one home on it.
But Mr. Courier is right. I mean, lot 20 could be subdivided again a number of different ways sometime in the future, even though they're combining it all back together now. That's a lot of acreage. You could do a lot with 20 acres.
But if we simplify it, we can go with number 2 and just do it for AR, and we eliminate a whole lot of
I think we, yeah.
We make it simple.
I think
KISS,
they need to have some kind of restrictions.
we,
Uh,
we go with KISS. Keep it simple.
Okay. Alright,
Essentially, what I see is that in this proposal, if we're gonna go with number one, we're gonna combine 17 through 19. You know, he can do anything he wants to if that happens on that comment.
Well, he can do, number one, I would request that until you know what the summary of intent looks like, you adopt 1 and 2. Because if you don't like what the summary of intent says, and you say, well, that's the minimum, or they don't want to put anything in and that's your negotiation, then you've got 2 as your fallback. Number 2 could be eliminated. In terms of the map or the plan that you have, that is the development plan. So you are recommending approval, denial, or approval with conditions. That physical representation, that can't be changed. The only thing we don't have a handle on right now is the text that goes along with the plat.
The usage case.
So essentially, what we could ask for is conditions or intent for items 1, 2, 3, and 4.
If you wanted that
What
detail.
are we gonna, what are you gonna do with that once we let that happen?
But I mean, the simplest thing is just adopt 1 and 2.
Well-
And then that covers everything.
And they're gonna have to come back.
Yes.
They'll have to come back with 1, which is the summary of intent. Once they've written it up, it's gonna have to come back to you, and it would have to come, and that's required by the zoning. The PM zoning requires that there be a summary of intent, and that's why, I was asked by Mr. Lasser, well, what does that mean? What it means is in text, tell us what and how you're gonna develop. And in this case, I said, let's make it binding. It's not just a, well, we think we might. No, whatever you say in your summary of intent, you will do. You can't vary from that. Now, if we want to put some wiggle language about minor changes versus major, which is already in the PM, we can do that. Like I said, there's some fallback language. I think we just need to see what the summary of intent says. It'll come back to you, it'll go to the Board of Commissioners. Certainly, Mr. Reeves and his clients have not had time to come up with that yet, I don't think. So it's not like they can present it tonight. But I would imagine that it may not take long, and if all they want to propose is, heck, yeah, we'll just go with the requirements of AR zoning, okay. Then we can write something that says that, or their summary of intent can basically repeat what's in number 2, and we're all good. But we don't know until they propose that. Their intention, we have heard, is single-family residential. Hey, all of a sudden I change my mind, I sell half my 20 acres. Who knows what happens to that other 10 of half of that 20?
Yeah.
Unless we have something imposed, which the PM zoning for this says, this is what you may and may not do.
And I think that's prudent, that, this piece of property has got a long history, and it hadn't always been good history. It was initially designed to be a residential golf community, as I understand it. And now it's just kind of a residential community, and there are existing homes up there. And so to preclude, I think that any changes need to have some type of restriction. And I think the plan, summary of intent, needs to be fairly specific, that if they want to put a religious retreat up there, and I'm not saying that's what they want to do, I'm just saying as an example, if they wanted to put a religious retreat up there, what all that entails needs to be kind of laid out. So, because with this PM zoning, it's pretty wide open. I mean, they could put a gas station up there
Yes.
if they wanted to. So I think it's prudent to go with the recommendations the staff is making.
you like to make a motion?
I would. I recommend we approve these changes. I didn't see any issue with combining lots or anything like that. Property owners should be able to do with their property what they like, in terms of the size and shape of it. So I recommend we approve that. With the two conditions, staff is recommending the written binding summary of intent and the development rules of county AR zoning being required for any development of the property.
Okay,
A second.
all in favor?
Let the record show that was unanimous. Mr. Reeves, so you've got a recommendation of approval with the language of the two conditions. That will now go to the Board of Commissioners at their, I believe it was August 11th meeting with this recommendation.
Okay. So, thank you.
All right, stick around.
Hang around, you got one more.
I'm in Pike County, I don't know how long I'm gonna stick around myself.
All right, item D is the final plat review, phase 7 of Logan's Landing, 30 lots, 19.19 acres, Brent Court, Heath Drive, and Parkview Drive. Mr. Reeves will open the public hearing for the Logan's Landing, phase 7. If you'd like to.
Okay, thank you again, Madam Chairperson, board members. This is just a continuation of the previous Logan Landing preliminary plat that was approved and the phases that have been done. We were back before you back at the end of last year for phase 6. The builder there, Mr. Mike McCune, has done very well out there. Austin County is moving too. And so he just wants to continue with the next phase of that. Be pretty much the same type of construction, same houses, same everything that you have already there.
Okay, anything else, Mr. Reeves?
No, that's it, unless you have any questions.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing. Doug, if you want to give us your overview?
Absolutely. Mr. Reeves does an excellent job. You'll see there's a very brief staff report. He's already corrected that one comment that I made. This subdivision was approved a long time ago under controversy. Fortunately, the controversy is long gone. At the time, the Tylers decided that they would not do the final approval all at once. They decided to do it in these phases, so that's why it's coming. There's still a lot of land out there that still hasn't been platted. This is just the latest one that we have. The plat meets all of the requirements of our ordinance. Again, with the one exception, it was corrected. He just forgot to put the letter C after the zoning because this is a conditioned approval. When it was rezoned, you have those conditions in your staff report. Nothing real controversial. Some of them have been done a long time ago. Some of them are just ongoing requirements, but nothing that would affect the plat. So this is an easy approval, nothing controversial, and an excellent job doing the survey work.
Any questions? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to,
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Now, Mr. Reeves, as you know, that is the final decision on this phase of Logan's Landing, so you're done with any hearings for this one. Congratulations to you and your clients.
All right, great, thank you. We'd like to make one note that you did add to the plan on this phase that about the note about the road would not be cut for any utility installation, as we discussed last time on phase 6.
That's Brad.
Any further questions to Mr. Reeves?
I think that's it. Thank you, Mr. Reeves.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, goodbye.
All right, item 5, other business, there is none. Item 6, planning commissioner issues and announcements. Anybody have anything?
I don't.
Item 7, secretary's issues and announcements, census 2020 response.
This is just going to be your monthly update on where we are with the census. This is as of July 8th, of course, because I've got to get the mail out. You know, over the weekend, I have to use data from several days ago as opposed to yesterday. But as of July 8th, the country was at 62%. Upson County is still behind that at 61.1, but we're certainly ahead of Georgia as a whole. We're 24th out of 159 counties. Unfortunately, we have stagnated. We really have not been adding many responses in the last few weeks. We've sort of hung around that 60 to 61%. So again, as I always plead, whatever you can do to talk to your neighbors, friends, relatives, etc., to encourage them if they have not, to get their response in and talk to other people. I mean, word of mouth. Again, over a third of the county still hasn't responded. We've been doing this since March, and this is very important. And again, as we always like to say, if you don't want that final alternative, which is people knocking at your door, get your response in, and hopefully they won't come knock at your door. Here's, you know, I won't go through this. This is the snapshot of our neighbors and their responses. You know, overall, comparatively speaking, yes, we're doing pretty good. But compared to 100%, well, I won't even say 100%. Compared to 90 or 95%, we're not doing that good. We're still behind well, we've got 4 weeks to get to what we did in 2010. You need to get up to 65% self-response to match what you did 10 years ago. 4% more to get what you did 10%. So we're behind what we did 10 years ago. You know, we hope that we will be able to make that up, but we just don't know. Meg has scheduled, as well as the city, to be at our utility departments on Wednesday. We are going to have tables set up for 4 hours. Obviously, utilities, almost everybody's got to come through the utility department. And we asked them what their busy day was, and we're going to have a census table at our utility departments for 4 hours. Talk to people to promote. We'll have some giveaways, things that we've been doing, but we just need to keep this rolling. We are getting towards the end. And again, we're only weeks away from enumerators going out in the neighborhoods and knocking on doors. And of course, it just helps the census, the fewer doors that they have to knock on. We can track, and you've got this graphic in your packet, which parts of the county are a little further along and which ones are a little farther behind. They speak, the statistics speak for themselves. Some have had some movement in the last couple of weeks, and some really haven't moved for several weeks. And again, enumerators, these are the areas where the enumerators are going to have to go in a few weeks if they don't get the response in. And that concludes my comments on the census.
Anything else you have for us?
Not from the staff, Madam Chair. Anything for me, Ms. Hicks?
Nothing from me?
All right. Do I have any objection to adjourning?
Make a motion.
Second? We're adjourned.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and give Brent a call. We'll be live until she calls Brent with IT.
I'd like to commend Ms. Hicks. I thought she did an excellent job on that issue concerning the storage building. Almost as good as you do. Almost.
Actually, for a first timer, she did far better than I did.
I think she did a great job.
Well, and like I
Good
said, I want
grasp of the issues.
to give her credit for the work on the amateur radio. She saved me a couple hours of work.
And zoning, you can cut off live feed now.